Welcome back to Drywall Mudding 101. This is Chris, your host. We're going to be showing you some awesome things today. First off, the tools of the trade that you need can work a little bit better than other ones. Some are cheaper than other ones. I'm going to give you guys a few options here. If you haven't seen my drywall, about how to hang drywall, screw drywall, the depth of how far to go in, definitely check that out. I will have that linked in the description box below. But just real quick, we're going to recap. Number one, make sure your screws are on the interior portion of your studs, making sure they're on the outer portion of each piece of sheetrock, drywall, up on the top and on the bottom as well. Make sure your electrical outlets are already cut. Make sure you take your drywall knife, go over, to make sure you don't hear any clicking. You don't want to be screwing in, dimpling in when you got mud, especially quick set. We're going to be doing all purpose. We're going to get to that in just a second. So make sure you took the 5 minutes pre-mixing your mud to go over your walls. Look at them. Again, watch that other video. It's linked in the description box below. Let's come in a little closer and let's check out the tools. If you're not already subscribed, we're doing a full 10-acre farmhouse ranch remodel. It's pretty exciting. Definitely a lot of projects. We've put in windows, we're gonna be putting in flooring, subflooring, insulation. I got Romex over here, LED lights above my head in the last shot. Okay, coming to our tools of the trade. This is called a hawk. This is almost like a little Statue of Liberty thing. You got a handle underneath, called a hawk. This actually needs to be a little bit cleaner. I'm gonna go ahead and take my knife and kind of scrape that a little bit. It's not bad, just definitely clean your tools after you're done. This is what I'm gonna be using. If you don't have access to that and you already have a little pan like this will work. The hawk is a lot better to most people. Some people love the pan. This is your pan. This is where you're gonna put the drywall mud right here. The hawk, you would keep it right here, just like a lump of clay, working with it, getting it off the edges, bringing it to the middle. You will also need drywall tape. This is your paper tape, very inexpensive. What's nice is for your corners, already has a pre-folded crease right there if you can see it. We'll get into more of that when we get to our corners. For the purpose of this is the easiest thing for me. It's a little bit more pricier. This is already pre-mixed. We will add just a hair more water to it and mix it up. So it says pre-mixed. Most people always mix it just a little bit more, but it's better than the powder and then the water. Pros, it's just cheaper and they know the consistency they want. But we're going with the green lid all-purpose by USG. Some people like the yellow light version. So there are a couple options. I'm going with the green lid, once again by USG, all-purpose drywall mud. It says it's pre-mixed, but we're gonna add about 6 ounces of water to that. If you have a professional mixer, awesome. If you don't, this is probably your cheapest, inexpensive way to do it. This can also be used for paint, etc. This goes into your power drill, simply goes inside and mixes it. Next up for tools, you have a couple different options for knives or a trowel. Couldn't find my trowel, so I have a 6-inch knife. That's a 10 or a 12-inch knife. Couldn't find a 4-inch knife. I probably will use the larger one for the ceiling because I do need to mud the ceiling. Mudding ceiling is going to be different, same type of concept, but a little bit different than the walls with the flat joints, butt joints, corner joints, etc. We're going to get into all that fun stuff. Now, one more product right here, the Kilts, I believe you pronounce it. This is original. This is a spray can oil-based primer. Perfect for situations like this. This might need it, this might not need it, but I'm gonna go a step further. I already bought it. And this is great for opportunities where the paper on top has been ripped off and you're seeing brown paper underneath, or unfortunately you put the wrong side and already drilled it in. Then what you need to do is you need to spray on the oil-based primer on top of that so the mud will be able to stick. It takes about 5 minutes to dry. And I don't want to be muddy, even though that's a very little portion of it. But let's say you accidentally peeled up a big section like there. Just spray that down, let it dry, and then your mud is going to be able to go over it. Obviously, we're not going to be mudding right here. We're going to be mudding the screw holes, and we're going to be mudding our joints here. This joint's going to need more because that is an uneven edge. If you watch my how to hang drywall video, you notice I did mess up right here. This is a factory end on this piece. And this is a cut piece, cheese grated down, which means there's a lip over here on this side here. All that means is we need to add a little bit more mud to it to be able to get flush and flat right here. This is your flat joint where 2 factory ends meet right together. Beautiful. That's going to be very little mud right up the middle, covering our screw holes and obviously getting right between our line right here. Beautifully flat. Then we have our corners over here. And then we also need to talk about our corner beads, which we will be doing in this video as well. Again, we're going to be adding about 6 ounces of water to this. So I'm going to go ahead and just pour 6 ounces of water on this here. All right, with that in mind, this is now fast forwarding, but we're going to come back to the video in just a second. So that does work, but I realized this is too small for this bucket and your Home Depot bucket, even if you went pre-mixed or pre-powder. So last night I actually got the tip of my drill all dirty with drywall mud because I was using this. Sure, it works, but if you want to mix it all the way up and down through the bottom, just got my hands on the Evolution mixer. They call the Twister. This is 9.5 amp variable speed. And I'm super pumped on this as well because I am gonna be mixing paint as well. You can mix plaster, mortar, cement, obviously paint. Here's the paint I'm gonna be mixing up right here. Same thing, 5-gallon buckets, and that's gonna come in extremely handy. I also picked up their miter saw with stand. Super pumped to get this up. After the drywalling, I will be using their miter saw for my accent walls. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel for that. Again, I'll link these in the description box below. Just make sure you clean it off. I will link this down in the description box below, as with the other tools, of course, that I've used from this video. This thing is super beefy, and look at how wide that is compared to this little sucker here. So again, definitely works if you're on an extreme budget, but if you want to step it up a little bit, then I will link this again below. Now, first and foremost, before we show you the mixer, I actually already added 6 ounces of water to a full bucket. Again, this is variable speed with your controller with the speed right over here on the left-hand side, looking like a go-kart steering wheel, actually really cool. And then you have your safety trigger here. So you gotta push this in for the trigger to be pushed in. So when this is not pushed in, that's your safety trigger so you don't activate it. Push that in, pull it through. And if you're going too fast or too slow while you're holding onto the grip, you can get that variable speed working. So I think this is definitely gonna do the trick. Considering how much taller it is than this bucket here, that gives me plenty of working room for my paint and mud jobs. Remember, always stick it in first before you start it, and making sure that it's not on the top layer, because then it's gonna fly around on you here. I really like that hand control variable speed over here on this side. Did a great job getting all the way down to my bucket. When you come back up top, I would lower the speed so obviously it doesn't flip all over the place. And what is nice is when you first start, it actually starts kind of slow and then gets up to the speed it's supposed to be. So it all of a sudden just doesn't go and whips around, flies stuff everywhere. It's on the lowest setting right now. And then just come up slowly, banging off any excess you have there. And then use their provided wrench if you're ready to douse it in water. I'm gonna go ahead and unplug it. It sure will like that, but probably for a precaution. And I'll put the motor out of the way. And then that will soak the entire time I'm mudding to stay nice and loose. And then I'll just wipe it down. Now we're ready to mud. Okay, this right here is great consistency right here. So let me grab my hawk. And then let me go ahead and show you here. So we'll go ahead and flop this good stuff on right here. It's a nice consistency where it slowly slimes down, but that's not gonna fall off if we accidentally swoop it. It's kind of like a slow slime. So let's go ahead and get a little bit on the middle right there. And then you use the edges of the hawk. If the consistency is way too thick still, you feel, you can add very little amount of water more. For our finish coat, we'll be doing even thinner this. So what you wanna do is you wanna keep that towards the middle of the hawk, and if it droops off to the side, you can go ahead and scoop it up and put it back using your edge to scrape it off. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to show you how to mud a flat joint. Nice and smooth here. We've checked our screws, everything looks good. We've dimpled in a mistake up here. We're gonna go ahead and show you what I do and have great results doing it. So first and foremost, if you're using your mud for the first time today, which I haven't, mix it up again. Mine is already mixed from about an hour ago or so. I'm gonna put a lot of mud on my hawk. And I'm going to talk a little bit louder. I don't have my microphone because this one has a wide angle and I want to show you. We'll get some close-up shots in just a second. Now after you're done, obviously put your lid back on. Now I'm not going to interfere with this. I'm going to move a couple of these out of the way. And then we're going to show you my technique I use for the screw holes, which the screw holes are going to get 3 coats, meaning everything over here and obviously on down. And I'll show you my technique with that. So I'm going to try to do this by not blocking the camera, and we'll get a close-up shot in just a second so you guys can see my technique. Now, I don't think the camera is going to pick up the very, very top, but I actually don't want to go to the very, very top because I need to put a corner edge tape at the very top. So I'm going to drop it down just a hair and start my tape. However the thickness of the tape is, I'm going to drop it down and go all the way down to the bottom. So first and foremost, I have all my compound mud on my hawk. We're looking good. Now obviously the pros make this look a lot easier than it is, but what we're going to do here is we're going to scoop it up and we're going to use the side of the blade and we're going to go ahead and just bring it on down. Now what's nice about the hawk is you can catch any drips, especially if you're working on the ceiling. Now what I like to do is I like to get it about the thickness of the tape, and right now I'm spreading it on really good, and we're gonna go ahead and wipe that down just a little bit in a second. But what this is doing is this is getting all of my compound inside of the joint where the flat joint meets together, this gap right here. I need to put a little bit more at the top. And I don't know if the camera picked that up. If you saw a little bit of drop, obviously try not to step in it, but don't mess with it unless your animals are around. Then you need to clean it up so they don't lick it or something like that. But what happens is it dries on the floor. You scrape it up in one fell swoop. Real easy. And let's go ahead and go all the way down. Let me get out of the way a little bit, make sure I'm not blocking the shot. Covering up your screw holes, obviously, on the way down. Now, some of the pros, man, they just like scoop it to the side. They go like this, boom, they get it like, oh man. You can tell they've been doing it for 20 plus years. Now, when we get to the bottom, let's go ahead and scoop it up with the other side and bring it up. And then what I do is when I get to the very bottom, I just kind of get it in. If it gets a little awkward, and then I just go straight at the very bottom. Try not to get my knife on the dusty ground and get dust all over my drywall and my compound. And then what I do is I go ahead and smooth it out. And we want to work with this kind of fast. If there's areas that are a little weak, I go back up again. I want to get it at least, in my personal opinion, I want to get it up to a ½ inch outside of the taping area. That's just what's giving me good results. Some people might think your line is too big. You don't need to do all that. To each their own. You go with what you know, Johnny. You go with what you know. All right, this is way too thick up here. Let me go ahead and even this out a little bit. Missed that catch, unfortunately. If you get it on your clothes, just let it dry and it wipes right off. You gotta brush it a little bit. Okay, now this is way too much goop up top, so I'm gonna come flat, straight down. And what I'm doing is I'm not like taking it all off, just with a nice smooth motion. So I have all that. That was just too much. I don't want too much mud behind my tape. Then it takes forever to dry. And this doesn't have to be perfect, you know, you don't have to feather it out, blah, 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 blah. But we want a nice, good consistency all the way up and down. And we don't want to wait too long. So let's set our hawk down. Let's grab our tape. Making sure you have a smooth edge. If you don't, put it flat against the drywall. Rip it off. Now you have a flat, nice angle. I have found starting from the top and going down is easier. Let me come back up here without blocking the shot. I'm going to start right at the top of my compound right here, giving me room for my corner seam when I get to it. I hold the tape with my hawk, and then what I do is I just carefully go ahead and put it on down like this. Now obviously you want to get it in the line. If you're off a little bit, then you want to check your line. So there's my line right there. Smooth that over. I'm actually off just a little bit. Sometimes it's a little hard to work on camera. So without pulling it too much, I'm going to straighten that out. And it wasn't too much where I have this like weird angle. Then I'm going to gently bring the tape down with my hawk. What that's doing is that's literally putting it right into the mud, and I'm doing it gently. And sorry, I'm blocking your shot a little bit. It's a little tricky from an angle, okay? And then what we do here is we come on down, and when we get to the very end, hold it firmly against the wall, tear, you're good to go there, okay? Now it's pressed up against the wall. Now this is where you still need to work quickly. Now as you can see, there's some lift off here. So we go ahead and gently put that on there like that. What that's going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go all the way up and down it. Okay, so it's sticking to the compound, but now we're going to do the same method. We're going to get it on the side of our knife, and we're going to come down with it. And what we're going to do is we're going to coat it just nice. Once again, the pros make this part look so much easier. They just zip it down and then they cut it off 90 degrees. It's kind of crazy to watch them. But anyway, we're going to coat this. And I'm not the best at feathering, but you go with what you know. You can't always hit home runs, folks. You try, but sometimes there might be a few runs of sanding in there. Again, the guys that have been doing this for 5, 10, 20 years, they can feather it so nice. And we're not even on the feathering part. I'm just on coating it. And the reason why we're trying to do this moderately quickly is we don't want dryness. We want to stay away from bubbling. We want to stay from edges coming up. Watch my video. I'll link it below. If you do get an edge that comes up, if you do get a blister in your tape, I'll show you how to fix it. Let's finish this up. Again, I'm putting way too much on right now, but that's just to coat it, and then we'll do our best. Again, I'm not the best featherer, and I'll show you what that means in just a second, but let's get this on. Now again, when we come to the bottom, we just go like that, and go like that a little bit. All right, our baseboard, remember, is going to go there. If you're not using baseboard, it's okay. All right, let's go ahead and back up the shot. All right, I'm going to put you guys over there on that side. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to push in with our right-hand side, putting firm pressure, and that's going to put everything into the middle. Example purposes, you're putting pressure, if you're working on the left side, you're putting pressure on your knife over here on the left side, and then putting it down right here. And what you're doing is you're bringing it down at a slight angle, putting, again, pressure on the top left, coming down with it flat, obviously, but putting most pressure on the left. What that's doing is that's feathering it in, pushing it towards the middle as it's feathering, giving you a nice, clean look like this. Obviously, this was sanded, but the professionals can get this once again without even having to sand. That saves a lot of time for them. Same thing on this side, but now you're going to be putting pressure on your right side of your tip coming down, and you probably want to go like right around here just so it flows in the middle evenly, and then come back down and bada bing, bada boom like that. Once again, not bringing out too much mud out of the tape, making sure there's enough mud underneath it, not too much, not too little, and making sure there's not too much mud on the exterior and not too little. It's a fine process. It might take you a few go-arounds before you get it. So we're gonna come down. This is feathering. Again, I'm not the best, but what this is doing, this is thinning down your edge and pushing everything in the middle. So you have a decently clean, thin line, less sanding later. Now, we're gonna go over to the left side, and if your tape is moving on you, then you can go ahead and go down the right, up the left. If it's not moving on you, then you can continue on, my friends. So the pros feather the edges beautifully. Again, mine's not the best, but gets the job done. Let's go ahead and finish this up. Okay, now that you've feathered both sides, and what I do is I pass through, I'm putting about 30% strength or less than that. I'm gonna go ahead and put my compound in the middle of my hawk. Don't want to get dry on me. Okay, this is just kind of a pass, barely at all, until I get to where I want, back down to about, I'd say 25, 30. And what I'm doing is I'm bringing out not only the excess off the top, but if you have too much mud in the tape. Okay, now I go back to the top once again, and barely, I'm talking barely, this is just to smooth out any lines, and we are looking good. And then I go from the bottom up, and again, barely anything right there. So, and then what we do is we look at it, because I have really good recessed lights. I look at it and I determine if there are any pull-ups from the side already. I want to address that. Meaning if there's any like little edge areas that might need, what I do is I just put a little bit more like that, and then simply just gently bring it out. That's if you have any edges that are kind of like just not completely flat. This actually looks really good, and I'm very happy with it. Let me show you one little thing that I just caught. So if you can see that dark part right there, I want to go ahead and seal that up. That might cause problems on me later on. So we're just going to go ahead and bring it in like that, and I like that. I'm going to leave that alone. That looks actually really good. If you really want to, you can make one more pass over it. Sure, this is going to take a little bit of sanding over here, but I sealed up my line. But the more you feather your edges, you won't have to sand in between coats. With a few of my rough edges that weren't feathered excellently, I'm actually going to have to make a couple passes at it before I put on my second coat. So this tape job right here, I'm happy with it. I'm proud of it. It looks good. I'm checking over the edges again in the nice light. Not too dry, not too wet. We're going to let that sit, and that should not bubble, blister, or have any edges lifting up like I did on my other one over here, which again, that video is already up on the channel, or will be up on the channel, showing you how to fix that. Again, I'll link that in the description box below. Let's move on to screws. Okay, for screws, it's very simple. The edge of your knife right here, just a little dollop. Now the professionals, they'll start all the way up and they'll go all the way down, pull it off 90 degrees. It's fantastic to watch, but I'm not very good at that. So let me show you what I do. I take it again on the left side, right side, wherever you want, and you want to get it over there like that, and then like that there. Now this is where it comes in very handy, so watch, let me show you. Let me go ahead and bring it off. Now as you see that? It's bubbling just a little bit right there. You don't want to leave it like that. So what I do is I make a couple passovers, and you actually will see a little bit of the screw head. I'm going to leave it like that until next coat. These are going to get 3 coats each. So if they're bubbling up on you, kind of like a little big pimple, you want to go ahead and hit them at different directions so you're not sanding in between putting it on the screws. Once again, let's do it to this last one up here. Just a little bit right there. Pop it on, and then I have my paint thing up on the wall there. And then what I do is I make a pass, I clean it on the edge of my hawk, and I make another pass, and I like that. That's how you do screw holes right there. Again, 3 coats of screw holes. It's a beautiful day outside, but today is sanding drywall. Okay, so first and foremost, the pros, they feather out like this, where there's literally nothing to sand. I, on the other hand, am learning how to feather out a little bit better, and that's what it means when it feathers out. They literally use the knife, use the trowel, and it's just so beautiful. This is not so beautiful. This is high ridges, and you can either take your knife and you can whack that down, but that's only going to take a few passes. And so I got myself my long little pole, and that actually is really beneficial for ceilings. They also come in little hand ones like this. I believe I have on here about 150 grit or so. Obviously, definitely use your mask. Once again, I got the 2097 3M filters on there with 3M mask. And then what we're gonna do here is we're literally gonna set it up right here. And obviously using two hands, I'm gonna go ahead and go up and down that section right there. Where it's high, I'm gonna smooth that out. You don't want to go too deep and expose the paper or even sand into the tape, the paper of the tape, because obviously then you're losing time and you got to re-mud back over it. It's up to you. I'm going to probably wear eye protection too, just to keep some dust out of my eyes. I got to hit this up top right here as well. And so let's go ahead and get some sanding in the books. I do want to show you what the screw holes look like after 3 coats. Beautiful. I don't see any indentions or anything. Let's show you what 2 coats looks like. 2 coats, if the camera's picking up, you can still see a little indention. Some of them you can't, some of them you can. Here's another one where you can see it just barely. That's why you hit it with 3 coats. All right, we just finished sanding and I want to explain a little bit. Obviously you're seeing too thick of a chunk right here. I actually had to use a little bit of Kilt's primer, and the reason why, I probably didn't need it, but as I was sanding, I was getting a couple of these marks in my drywall, and then I found my proper technique to sand. So let me show you how to cut down on dust. I tried this one out for a little bit, produces dust. This technique is actually kind of cool. Tide, and it is a dust-free drywall sanding kit, and it comes with the proper sandpaper. It actually comes with 150 drywall sanding paper. This is what it comes with here. The gray tubing is what it comes with, and then it attaches to my shop vac. It did a great job, and it definitely cut down on my dust. I'm not gonna say it's dust-free completely. So we've finished this wall over here with 2 coats. Our first one with taping is our first. We're gonna look at our second tomorrow in the light, when the beautiful light pours in. If we have any high spots, we'll go ahead and take care of that once again, just like the first go around after the first one. And then for our third coat, we're gonna be thinning it down just a little bit more with about maybe just a little bit more to make a nice skim coat on the top for our third go around here. And obviously we still need to do the top taping and the corner as well. All right, let's take a look at the sanding process after I am finished already, and then we'll come over here and look at the corner beads. And the light is coming in, shining on the wall here. So let's go ahead and take a look at after round 2. It's looking really good. Now, obviously there is a little imperfection right here, but remember, we're gonna be doing a skim coat over the top, which will fill that in. But what you're looking for is you wanna sand it down so that is beautifully feathered out. You don't want to fill any ridge underneath your fingernail, etc. It doesn't have to be perfect, because remember, we are going to be doing a skim coat over the top, but you want to get all the high spots down. Feels just beautiful passing over. Now in a perfect world, I would have feathered this out just a little bit, because this is a factory edge into a non-factory edge, as in the factory edge is curved down right here just a little bit. You can slightly fill very little amount of a raise up right here. This is going to be my accent wall. Be careful about that. You don't want these speed bumps at all. You want them filling very flush. Now, one way you could potentially get rid of that is feather in more in this little section of the factory edge right here. Let's go ahead and go over to 2 factory edges, and that feels a lot better than that over there. I can't tell with the naked eye, I can't see any speed bump in there, but 2 factory edges coming together just tapes up and muds much better than a factory edge into a non-factory edge. I don't think we're gonna be able to see the little inlet here of the factory edge, how it slopes gradually down to join together. But I really like the outcome of sanding. This one turned out absolutely gorgeous. Loving it right there. Now let's go ahead and look at the screw holes. You want the same thing. You want a nice smooth. You want to fill nothing. Your hand is going to be your secret weapon in this, to be able to fill for ridges. And what you want is you want a beautiful sanded down feathered edge with a clean look. Now you can barely see the hole right there. It's perfectly flat, but you can see the slight shadowing of the indentation of the screw, but barely right there. What you don't want is you don't want to fill any gap in there at all, because that's going to show up with painting. You're going to see that when the sunlight hits it just perfectly. All right, guys, I'm going to break into the video real quickly here to discuss the corner beads. Now you want to nail in these small holes on the top section here. There's going to be small holes that are closer to the edge here, and these big holes below, that's for filling in with the drywall mud. So nail into these small ones towards the edge and then fill in your mud here. Now with that said, we're going into the future, but we're going to go right back to the video because it's already done and beautiful. But when you nail them in, make sure you nail them in so they match up beautifully so you can mud it a lot easier. Let me show you a corner that I goofed on where it sticks out just a little bit, and you can actually compensate that, but you're gonna have to build up a pretty decent layer of mud right here to even that out. Again, it's like, so it might just take you a couple times over there, and I need to fix that just a little bit to square that up and flatten out this just a little bit more with one more layer. That will save you a lot of time if you do it right the first time and square up your edges. And the proper nails to use for corner beads are going to be cupped head drywall nails, and I just use 1.5 inch smooth shank here. And what these are is these are specialty nail heads that are super thin, even kind of dented in, as you can see there. And what that does is once those are nailed into the top row like I just discussed, and don't pound that in too much or you're going to get a big divot because these things are pretty flimsy metal, you're going to be able to cover that nail head a lot easier than screws or other type of nails. Now I go into corner beads a little bit more thoroughly with my how to finish a window video. Stay tuned for that. I'm going to be putting a Craftsman ledge right here. But I use corner beads in the right upper section as well as with the left section. Now, some people bend this in from 90 to about 85, and then they use a beautiful little pivot so that they can kind of fill it in and make it nice and smooth. I'll leave that up to you. I actually bent mine in about 85 degrees. And then what you do is you pivot that just beautifully, nail it in, and then you have a nice smooth surface to work up to. If you don't want to do that, slide it in 90 degrees, nail it about every 12 inches or so on your long pieces. I did a corner bead up on top, on the side here, and on the side here as well. Your mud is going to go right over the top, feather it in all the way over here as you can. Try to get it up against your windowsill the best you can, and then use a little bit of caulk to go ahead and clean that line up a little bit. Again, I have a little bit of an exposed metal edge just on the very tip, just so that if I bump into this later on, I'm not gonna chip off a piece of drywall. Now let's go ahead and look at the corner beads, which I think turned out fantastically for round one. And I haven't put the top one up first because I needed to put a slight little piece of drywall right here, so I needed to tape and mud this. Put a couple rounds on that before I put my top corner bead up right up here. But the other one is looking great as well. So we'll put, same exact thing, we'll put some of the high spots, we'll do another coat, sand it again, put a skim coat, and that should look absolutely fantastic. And then we'll wrap it up with a Craftsman Farmhouse sill right down here. What's great about this tape is that it has a crease already down the middle right there, and that is where you're going to crease it, and that will go right into the corner starting at the top. I might leave a small gap for the top portion that goes that way as well. Same method applies for your ceiling and drywall and your corners here. You're going to go ahead and do the same type of mudding method, fill in that crack, bend it, put it in, feather it out on each side, and that's how you get that beautiful 90-degree angle on ceilings. So let's go ahead and begin that process. All right, I need to film fast because it is warm in here and this is drying out, especially on the feathered edges, pretty quickly. Anyway, let me show you my technique here, which is absolutely beautiful. Number one, fold it, and as we can see here, nice tight corner, and then go ahead and cut it to size. down below. We're looking beautiful there. Now here's the technique that's gonna get you a nice sharp edge and be able to get out the excess beneath it. So what I did on the right side is I used my knife right up against the edge, going all the way down with my knife on the right side, getting out the excess, and then on the bottom, on the left side, coming up, same method applies, getting your knife right in there, going all the way up the left side, so it's not wiggling and all that kind of stuff on you. And that gave me a beautiful sharp corner. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put my top layer on and feather that out. All right, for your corners, and sorry I'm getting a little echoey because I'm in the closet, a little tricky with one hand filming and one hand on the hawk and my knife, but let me go ahead and show you a couple tips I have for your cracks right up here. Now your technique will get better over time, especially off your second coat. By the time you get to your skim coat, you're gonna be dialing it in beautifully. So on this type of an angle right here, to fill in that gap beautifully, again, one pass and you're filling in that crack up there. Use your edges for the top and bottom. I'm right-handed. So all we're gonna do here, again, it's on the top left edge right here, and then you're gonna wipe it in like that. Sorry if the camera was a little out of the way there, but as you can see, just like that, and I have very little left on my knife. Let's do that one more time, just in case I didn't get the shot. Again, starting up top here, wiping that in, and then of course you're gonna have excess here. Go ahead and wipe that in even more. Now we need to get this section right here a little bit more of a base, but not much, to lay our tape down. And then as we come back, we're gonna use the same left edge. It's kind of gone over. It needs to be a little bit more over to the left there, but we're gonna be going up like that. And then obviously sometimes it scrapes it like that, so I just kind of go like that, bring it around, and that's gonna give you, once you have the base and the edge, a nice foundation to lay your tape on. This is too little right here. And I'd say this is too much right here. So sometimes you have to just kind of even that out a little bit for a nice base. Same method applies in the corners. Go ahead and get a nice line in there. Use your edges, whatever technique feels better to you. But the edge of the knife being able to sweep in there, it gets the crack so much easier than trying to do that, trying to jam it in there. Just simply brush and go. Now, out of all the mudding, I actually have found that the top seams are probably the easiest to work with. And I actually been going in smaller strips, which makes it a little bit easier as well. So I'm actually gonna cut this down. So I do a very small strip. That's about a maybe 3.5 foot strip. I take a section at a time. So on this wall right here, I'm gonna go from the seam all the way over. That's a total of 4 feet. That's a full section. But these walls here, I just took it in small little sections. One full sheet, one full sheet. So I wasn't doing like an 8-10 foot section at a time. Sure, you'll have to line up your edges. Not that big of a deal. So I'm gonna cut this right here. And a pair of scissors definitely helps as well if you can't get your knife in there to rip it off the backside. So a pair of scissors definitely helps as well. So I'll cut it right here. And then what I do is after I've mudded my base, I go ahead and stick it up where I want it to be right there. And then I draw it over and I punch it right into the mud right here. And then I just kind of take my fingers and I run it right through the crease. You can use your knife if you want, but I actually wait till I've already done it with my fingers like this. We still need to cut that. And then the same thing as your corners as well. What I like to do, again, get that seam right up there real nice. Taking your knife, I should have cleaned that a little bit better, but it's okay. And then what we do is, we're not pushing in too terribly hard, but what we're doing is we're sealing the tape on the base as we have our knife right up in the crease. Don't push too hard because you don't want to rip that crease, especially if you have a big gap. Then your knife will get in there too sharp and you might rip your tape there. And then I go on top, same exact thing, and I want to get it in the base. Now see, I'm taking off excess as well. And you'll have to go through it a couple times, getting a nice foundation, and then we're going to put mud over the top of it and wring it out one more time as well. But see how I haven't done it yet, and I have done it. It just seals up that tape real nice, as you can see there on the mud there. And then take your knife on your hawk, clean that off. I should be using 2 hands, obviously. And then once it looks like it's in the base really nice, which it does look like it is, except for maybe a little bit right there, sometimes you have to add the mud onto the tape to seal up that gap and get that underneath it right there. And then again, same method applies. You don't want to remount too much after you're done. Okay, now after sticking it to the base, then I went back. Same method applies with your knife strokes as the base. And as we can see here, we have a nice over the top foundation, but obviously that is way too much. So what I'd like to do is, again, whatever you feel more comfortable with, you can go right to left, left to right, but you want to go the opposite direction. We don't want this tape sliding on us underneath. So again, I'm going to get right up in the crease there, as you can see, gliding it as far as I can. Now, if possible, you can kind of half moon feather off, but I have an edge right here is the problem. So I'm gonna go a couple times that direction, and then I'm gonna get that corner a little bit better. So let's go ahead and clean it off, and I'll come back the other direction. Again, getting your knife right there in the edge. And then now I'm gonna pull this direction, opposite direction, so the tape doesn't move on me. And we're gonna get all that out. A little tricky with one hand. And then what we'll do here, again, we're trying to bring out a little too much excess. I'm putting very little pressure, if anything now. And we're gonna be getting off the excess. But we don't want too much excess off because we don't want bubbles to run wild like the river. So again, very little pressure, just getting the excess off. I tend to add more on the top. Yeah, I have to scrape off more, but to each their own. And then what I like to do is I'll finish it off, clean up that little nasty chunk that was right there. And then again, less is more. Now I do need to still clean up that little area right there. Now we will be adding another coat to this and a skim coat. So if there's any little things like this, we're just gonna sand it off. We're not gonna worry about it too much right here. That looks beautiful. I'm still gonna do this little edge right here, a little bit more feathery, but we'll finish that up. Don't play around with it too much or you're gonna lose too much mud out of the tape, but I'm showing you what has worked for me on all my edges. No bubbles, no peeling, no raises. Now we're going forward, but we're gonna move back in time. As you can see here, this is the back of a drywall sheet here. We're gonna be working on that section right there. I highly recommend using some Kilt's primer spray. Very inexpensive, I'll have it linked below. And I've done that for these sections here. No need to if you have drywall like this or ceiling like this. But if you have these areas here, I would recommend the primer underneath. Now with that said, I forgot about it right here on this edge, and it's holding just beautifully. Over the course of years, I don't know, but I would invest in a small $6 or $7 spray primer. I think it was actually like $6. And just to kind of live with the benefit of it potentially not crusting off and falling off later on. All right, let's go ahead and check on in with you after I have completed my mudding here, and I do want to talk to you a couple small tips that will definitely help you and save a lot of time. So first and foremost, as you can see, we got screw holes, we got our joints, we got our edges, our top and bottom, down the sides. We have the ceiling, which is looking absolutely stunning. Right here, we have some markings. Now what I'm doing here on the markings is it was actually just sunset about 20 minutes ago, and the light picked up a little bit of some high spots that I need to sand down. I didn't catch it in time, so tomorrow's sunset, I'll go ahead and do that. Definitely look at it in the different times of day light. That will reveal a lot of things. If you're a very detailed person, if not, doesn't bother you, no worries, no harm, no foul. So I've marked all the areas here that I need to fix a little bit with just a little bit of patch. As you can see here, it says fan out. And the reason I say fan out is it's just not even right here. So I need to go ahead and branch it in about 1.5 inches or so. And then that will smooth that over. Same thing here. Now I want to talk to you about this. Earlier in the video, I did mention this. And what we're looking at here, again, not that big of a deal, but if you're a very perfectionist type of a person, I'm going to do it just because. But right here, again, this is two factory edges coming together, so you have a deeper crevice right here. So you get this wear when you sand on your drywall because of the two factory edges coming together. So again, I need to fan that out. So make sure you're fanning out properly. That way you can sand it flat and you won't have a slight dip right here. That's why I'm getting that. So there's a little tip for you there. Now everything is sanded except for my pencil marks. So I'm gonna go over that with a spot. And then I'm gonna lightly sand again and we'll go ahead and fix that. So I do wanna talk to you about your lines here. This is after 2 applications. And sometimes again, you just start spotting stuff. Since I'm already gonna go back, I'm gonna go ahead and pencil that in right there. I need to lightly sand that or just fill that just a tiny bit. Again, this is gonna be an accent wall, not that big of a deal, but since I'm already going back and doing it, might as well just take the extra 30 seconds. So this is after the second, but it was kind of a heavy layer. This is after the second off of 2 light layers. I like it. I don't think I'm gonna do a skim coat on top of that. Typically, you mud and then you put the second on, and then if you need to sand, and then you put a skim coat over the third. I'm happy with the way it is because they're a little bit more thicker than the typical second layers, and I think I would even went a little bit heavier on the first. So if you're happy with it, you don't see any tape showing, it's smooth and beautiful, I'll leave that up to you if you want to skip the third coat. It just saves a lot of time, to be honest with you. That's again, if you went a little heavier like I did on the first and second. It's sanded smooth. We're looking absolutely fantastic. Now for the ceiling, again, you're gonna see a little bit of high and low, if you can see that. I kind of like that. It gives a little texture to it. It's not completely smooth. You're gonna see some crevices right through here and over here. I really like the way it turned out. It gives a little bit of character. If you don't like that and you want that 100% smooth and you're not gonna do any orange peel texture, then you wanna go ahead and sand that even down a little bit more. I might, now that the light is hitting it, sand maybe some high spots right there and there. I'll come back later on this evening and take a closer look at that. But again, typically you're not gonna see any of that. I didn't even see that earlier with the sunset, but because the pot lights are literally aiming right at it, that's why you're seeing it a little bit like that. I kind of like a little bit of the high and low texture. That's why I purposely left some areas like that. And when you're back here, it just gives it a little bit of a texture. If you're gonna do orange peel over it, you're not even gonna notice any of that. I'm gonna skip the orange peel. I kind of like a smooth with a little bit of texture in there. So for the ceiling, I did 2 coats. And I actually used, it's not here with me right now, but I used a paintbrush roller. I'm gonna link that in the description box below. And then I put a couple extra ounces in my mud to make it go on smooth, not to mention being able to actually get on the paint roller. And then I rolled it on the ceiling with my long roller brush. And then I smoothed it out with an 11-inch knife. And then going back and sanding it turned out absolutely stunning. I had popcorn ceilings, which were scraped down, which the scraping did not that great of a job, to be honest with you. It was painted popcorn ceiling, which brings me to this. So originally I went with the all-purpose green one by USG. It's a harder all-purpose. This +3 is a light compound. It's an all-purpose light mud, and it is so much easier to sand. I highly recommend going with the +3 if you want an easier job sanding. Now with that said, the green all-purpose, maybe for your base coat, maybe that's why my lines and everything turned out so good after the second coat and I didn't need the third, is because I used the all-purpose green one, which is not the lightweight. The blue +3 is the lightweight. Okay, a little tip for you guys here to save a little bit of bucks. If you don't have a Home Depot bucket, this one is gonna produce 4.5 gallons of mud. This cost about 15 and change. You do get a bucket though, which is nice. Home Depot Lowe's bucket with a lid, that's gonna run you like $6. This has a lid, that's included in the price. So what I personally did is I bought 2 of these, probably one is definitely sufficient, and then I switched over to the pre-mixed box, which is only 3.5 gallons. This costs less than $10, so about 5 and change difference. Sure, you get a gallon less, but then I just put it in here and then seal up the lid. So look into that and see how your job goes. Next up for sanding, I use my shop vac and my brush here, and then a company sent out a really beefy one, which I probably already showed video of. That was good for sanding the first coat, but then with more detailed work, a drywall sanding sponge is absolutely amazing. This is in the drywall department. I'll try to link this in the description box below as well. It's forgiving like a sponge, and this one in particular has this angled corner here. This was amazing. This was definitely a game changer for sanding, especially in the corners. If you have any nasty boogers in your corners, this thing brings it out just beautifully. Highly recommend a sanding sponge with an edge like this. And then of course use a 6-inch, 4-inch knife to knock down any major edges before you do sanding. It just saves your sandpaper. And then I just had some 150 kind of folded over. That was before I found this sanding sponge, and then I did all my sanding with the sanding sponge. So much better, that's more detailed. Of course, you can have the sander on the long stick, running it up and down as well. And then these benches came in handy as well. Not a necessity, but having a couple of these benches, I was able just to set them up and kind of walk on top of them, and I was able to get the ceiling a lot better. My corner beads came out really nice, beautiful edges, and I went all the way around right here. I'm gonna leave this kind of like a live edge right here. But this turned out just beautifully, beautiful smooth up here as well. My corner beads. Now, as you can see, you see some metal here. That's okay, because what you don't want to do is have a big buildup right here on the edge, and then you're going to paint it, and then the first time you bump into it or scrape it, that drywall is just going to break right off that edge. So don't have a big buildup on that metal edge. So again, my corners, inside corners, just stunning, beautiful. Love the way those turned out. As we can see there, just beautiful 90-degree angles, a little bit of dust in the crevice. You might want to wipe down excess dust before you do paint for sure. A couple of little pencil markings up there. So I'm going to go ahead and fix all these items here. Now make sure that you are subscribed like I keep mentioning in the video, because now that we are done with mudding, sanding, corner beads, we still need to primer. You have to primer, and you have to use a primer and sealant type of a primer that's gonna primer and seal bare drywall like this before we can lay on our paint. So make sure you're subscribed for that video. I'm gonna show you what to do, what primer and sealer to use. We're gonna be doing the same method to the ceiling, but with a specialty ceiling paint by Benjamin Moore, so stay tuned for that. Well guys, thank you so much for watching the video. If you wouldn't mind, if you've made it this far into the video, please thumbs that video up. It helps the channel and the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much for your time and watching. Hopefully all the tips and tricks in this video will help you do your job much better and skip a couple mistakes that I did. Also, I'm gonna be doing a full accent wall on this wall right here. I'm gonna be painting this vinyl window. I'm gonna be putting flooring in, baseboards in. This is just one of the bedrooms. We got a whole entire ranch to remodel. Again, look in the description box below, including my Evolution mud mixer, which definitely helped with full buckets. For all your links for all the products I used in this video, thank you. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye. Don't let the party stop, guys. Hit one of these videos, continue to watch, and we'll see you soon.